we will maintain restrictions on firearms in place and launch a public and transparent review to make sure we take the politics out of decisions related to public safety.
But if you want to be taken seriously as a potential government, you have to be honest with Canadians. But that's something that we're seeing is increasingly difficult for Mr. O'Toole to do. On guns,
we would support a mandatory buyback of assault weapons. It's something Mr. Trudeau had said he would do. It's something that advocates have demanded, and Mr. Trudeau backed away from that commitment.
Guns are an issue. Now, Mr. O'Toole is now on the defensive. Gun control continues to be a big issue on the Conservative campaign, but as you just saw, also now for the Liberals. But Mr. O'Toole is singing a new song on the ban of assault-style weapons. The platform said they would repeal the 2020 Order in Council, which essentially banned 1,500 different styles of assault-style weapons, including some of the guns used in massacres like the École Polytechnique in Montreal. After intense pressure, he said now his party will keep the Liberal restrictions already in place on these assault-style weapons. So that's a flip-flop. But the question is, he said he'll still review it. Will that review lead to those guns being banned or not? But there's a bigger issue as well. It's not just these guns. What's the most realistic plan to actually curb gun violence? Is the assault-style weapons really the thing, or are there other policies that needs to happen? Candidates are back to debate. Pam Damoff is the Liberal candidate for Oakville, North Burlington. Eric Duncan, Conservative candidate for Stormont, Dundas, South Glengarry. Rachel Blaney, NDP candidate for North Island, Powell River. Good to have you back. Mr. Duncan, clearly, your leader had to rewrite his platform on assault-style weapons. I just want to get some clarity. He now says he will keep the ban on the 1,500 different assault-style weapons, but he'll have a process to review it. Is the position now, once that process is done, some of those assault-style weapons could become legal again? He's prepared to repeal some of the guns on that list could eventually become legal again. Am I mistaken on my understanding of that?
So with that question, when Aaron was asked that today, he addressed that by saying it's going to be an independent public process for this review, Evan, to come out and say at the end of the day, if this happens or that happens, what we've committed to doing is taking the politics out of this, is not having elected officials decide these factors, have a public process, which we've not had to date, a nonpartisan, independent third way process of doing this. And at the end of the day, I think Canadians need to have confidence from all walks of life to contribute to this. To get in and say, okay, well, if this happens or this happens, that's presupposing and taking away from its independence. So what we've said is we are going to show the process of making sure that everybody has, from all walks of life, have an opportunity to evaluate on this. And I think at the end of the day, that's the way. But Evan, to your point as well, the number one thing we're not addressing during this election when we talk about firearms or gun violence are actual tools that can go to suppress this. All these things and these angles we're talking about, criminals who are smuggling in guns, who are using handguns illegally, they're not suddenly going to change any sort of mandatory buyback program. We need to get into more details of how we're actually going to tackle criminals who aren't going to listen to a buyback program, aren't listening now to law enforcement, and give them some real teeth to make a difference when it comes to reducing gun violence, which is about the last 6 years.
Okay. Gun violence is up, and we'll talk about that. But I just want to be clear. You're saying there's going to be some independent process. We don't know who's going to be on it. But if they decide, this independent body that the Conservatives are going to have, that the AR-15 or the Ruger or the gun used in École Polytechnique or Moncton is now legal, as it used to be, the Conservative government would be prepared to accept it because of the independent process. Ms. Damoff, this has been a divisive issue, and Mr. Duncan is not wrong that gun violence has gone up, not down. But what do you make of Mr. O'Toole's position that he will try to, quote, depoliticize this by taking that order in council and handing it over to a third party?
Well, I got to tell you, Evan, my head is spinning with the number of changes that Mr. O'Toole has made. He knows that 80% of Canadians support the ban that we brought in on these military-style assault rifles, and that's why now he's willing to say anything to anybody to get elected. The National Firearms Association has said to its members, stay steady, we are winning. The Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights has said, remain calm. Look, these groups gave Mr. O'Toole an A. He made them a promise that he was going to repeal our ban. And look, they've stood up in the House of Commons time and time again, not only Mr. O'Toole, but the members of his caucus calling for us to repeal the ban. We stood firm. We're now taking further action to make it mandatory or render these guns unusable. And
but Ms. Damoff, just to be fair, look, you and I could do a whole show on Liberals who have changed positions. I don't want to, change some major promises, for example, on ending first past the post. So, governments and the Liberals have changed as well. But just on guns, Stats Canada found a staggering 81% increase in criminal use of firearms from 2009 to 2019. Over half firearm-related homicides in 2017 committed with a handgun. I know the Liberals promised to set aside $1 billion for provinces in Ontario to implement a ban on handguns, but why is it optional? If your party says you're serious, why not make it mandatory?
Well, Evan, we put $500 million back into the RCMP to stop smuggling because the Conservatives had cut. 75% of people who die by firearms are dying by suicide. Women are in abusive relationships who've been stuck during the pandemic with an abuser with a firearm. Nobody's talking about that. This is a multi-pronged problem that needs to deal with guns and gangs. We need to deal with domestic violence. We need to deal with mental health issues. We have funding in our platform on mental health. But let's be very clear. Mr. O'Toole is jumping all over the place to try and get elected, and he's made promises to the gun lobby, and he has all of them saying, don't worry, it's okay, we just need to get elected, and then we can go back to what we were doing before.
So,
and his process,
Ms. Blaney, where would the NDP stand on that, Ms. Blaney? Would the NDP implement, first of all, would they keep the 1,500 guns banned on the assault-style weapon ban the Liberals introduced? And what about the handgun ban? Would the NDP actually implement that?
Well, first of all, Evan, it is really disingenuous. And I don't know how many times this has ever happened, that there's a footnote added to a platform. We are seeing the Conservatives flip back and forth, and it doesn't sound like they're going to stick to their commitments. And in fact, we don't know what their commitments are anymore. And when we have this discussion, one of the main things we keep hearing is about the illegal guns that are being trafficked across our border from the United States. But we know that when the Conservatives were in power, when they were government, they let go of about 1,000 CBSA, the border workers, and that means the folks that were on the front lines doing that work, making sure, addressing these issues, were gone. And when the Liberals were put into government, they've only hired 200 of those folks back in those positions. So if there was a dedication to addressing that issue, we would be seeing announcements that reflect the people on the ground that we need to see to stop this. So when it comes to these activities, when we look at these guns and we look at the real concerns that so many communities have, when we look at the real realities that hunters who've been doing this for generations in some families, we need to make sure there's a clear process. If municipalities want to bring forward the handgun ban, then they need to also see the resources so they can do this.
Sorry.
Absolutely it is, but that just shows the complexity.
The municipal ban on handguns is different, but would the NDP still support the existing repealing the order in council that basically banned these 1,500 assault-style weapons? Is that something that the NDP supports, yes or no?
And the leader was very clear today that we would make sure that there was that buyback. This is the other thing that we absolutely have to see. If people have these weapons, they're legal gun owners, we need to get them bought back. We need that process to be clear and transparent, and we need to make sure that we're not seeing these illegal guns come over the border, which is so concerning for the safety of so many communities.
Right. I'm just trying to get so you support the ban, but you'd make sure that all the guns are bought back. Is that the position?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
That is the position that the leader said.
I got to leave it there. Hey, the three of you, I just always appreciate your time. There's so many consequential issues. Gun violence is one of them. And Ms. Damoff, Mr. Duncan, Ms. Blaney, I appreciate your commitment to all these issues.